cap signings are being accompanied by praise of the cap from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. And while the governor was in Lancaster today, Western New York lawmakers called the tax cap a victory for homeowners in their district. My next guest, Assemblyman Dennis Gabryszak, says it's great news, and he actually was present for this event. It was in his district, and he is joining me from Buffalo now to talk a little bit more about the cap and some other major bills that passed this session. Assemblyman, nice to see you.
Nice talking with you, Liz.
So this was right in the heart of your district. You were there, and actually Lancaster, unlike other parts of upstate New York, is actually growing. Is that right?
That's correct. Lancaster right now is the fastest growing community in the Western New York area. A lot of new homes are being built, a lot of young families moving into Lancaster, which is a little different than what you normally see in the Western New York area. Usually it's population decrease, but Lancaster is growing fairly rapidly.
Yeah, actually you and other elected officials, obviously, who voted yes on this particular piece of legislation are hailing it as a victory. On the other side, you have the Buffalo News today greeting the governor with a headline, 2% solution, no panacea as mandates lurk. What's your view on mandate relief? Do you think it was sufficient to offset that cap this year?
I don't think it was sufficient. I think it was a good first step in terms of mandate relief. Coming from local government, I know the impact that it has, that a tax cap would have on local governments and school districts. So I'm fully aware of that, and I believe that the governor has a process, has a team in place to look at mandate relief as we go forward in the future, and I think that's one of the things that you're going to see. I think the governor has to focus, and the legislature has to focus on some mandate relief. For example, I had a couple pieces of legislation that, while they did not go anywhere this session, that dealt specifically with mandate relief that would relieve the school districts of some of the cost or some of the rules and regulations that the legislature puts on them to try and help. While they weren't big pieces of legislation that would save them an awful lot of money, I looked at that as a first step. Based on the meetings that I had with school district and superintendents to see exactly what some of their concerns were and how we could go about relieving them of some of the mandated costs.
Right, because you were actually Cheektowaga Town Supervisor, right? So you have some personal experience of exactly what this is like when the state says to a local elected official, you must do such and such and so, and then also says, oh, and by the way, you can only raise your revenue by 2%. Minus some exemptions, right? So what happened to that legislation that you were trying to get through this year?
Well, the legislation that I was sponsored and that we were trying to get through actually would have helped the school districts in terms of, one was the cancer screening legislation. Not to say that cancer screening isn't important, because it is. Everyone should do what they have to in terms of maintaining their health. But at the same time, teachers also have sick time. There's an awful lot of time during the summer. They have time available where they could do that screening. So one of the things was have the school districts give them a break where they would not have to bring in a substitute teacher. That's one of the things that we got back from the school boards and talking with them. Of course, the bigger areas in terms of mandate relief come from Triborough and Taylor law,
right,
which wasn't going to happen.
No, it wasn't going to happen. I mean, and then next year is an election year. So what makes us think that next year is going to be any easier than this year?
Well, I don't think that. I think what you're going to do is incrementally walk into some of the changes that may come about in terms of Triborough and in terms of Taylor. I don't think it's something that that's going to be mandated. I think the governor is right in his approach. He has a team that is going to be working with school districts, working with municipalities to actually get some feedback and see what can be done, what are the steps to go ahead and take some measures to relieve some of the onerous mandates that are placed on municipalities and also on school districts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that local elected officials, at least from this story, who are quoted are saying, well, we're still trying to figure out what this exactly means. But when and if some person who used to be in your shoes, who's now in your shoes, the ones you used to wear as a town supervisor, comes to you and says, because of this cap, I can't make ends meet, I can't pay my bills, and I'm going to go broke, what are you going to say to them?
Well, there's a couple things that municipalities will have the ability to do. Number one, they can actually go over the 2%.
Right.
If there's a need, if they can demonstrate to the public that there's a need for a greater than 2% increase in taxes, they have to get 60% of the vote to approve that. The other thing that they can do is, for example, if you have a good year where you can where your taxes are going to be below 2%, let's say it's a 1% tax increase, or if they hold the line at 0, that gives them the opportunity to carry some of that percentage over to the following year. So there are some things in there that make it, a little more friendlier to municipalities and school districts. But the bottom line is, I think the governor is right when we say we have to cut expenses. We have to be mindful of taxes, because if we talk to people in our district, that's one of the things they talk about is the heavy burden of taxes in the Western New York area.
Yeah, Western New York has, from a political standpoint, seen a lot of upheaval of late. I mean, obviously you had a situation where you won a special election, the Democrats did, that you were not expected to win in Kathy Hochul's seat. You just lost a colleague, Sam Hoyt, went to take a job with the Cuomo administration. It seems to me that, and when Len Lenahan, of course, the Democratic chairman, is going to step down, this is all, according to reports by my colleague Bob McCarthy out there in Buffalo News, this is all part of some kind of peace that the Cuomo administration tried to broker through Charlie King, the executive director of the party. Is this peace, such as it is, going to hold, do you believe? Erie County Democrats are sort of a fractious bunch of folks.
Yeah, we do have our little squabbles, that's for sure.
You
do. The one good thing is, the fact that, Charlie King has come in and tried to bring some stability to the party. Quite honestly, I met with Len Lenahan the day before he made his announcement that he would be leaving. Len's been a great chairman. I believe Len is now going to be moving on. As you said, you've seen a lot of changeover, a lot of things that are still happening in terms of electeds going to other positions, and you're going to have some more seats that are coming up. One of Assemblyman Schroeder is running for state or city comptroller. So, that could open up another seat. So there's been a lot of change in the Western New York. And as far as the peace process goes, I think one of the things that is so critical is that they bring all the different groups that represent the Democratic Party in Erie County, bring that together and have a discussion to see exactly who should lead the party and how we go about representing the Democratic values and bringing that to the Erie County area.
Do you think that has something to do with Chris Collins? Of course, he is up for re-election. He's a Republican, the Erie County executive, and at one time he wanted to run for governor. And if, in fact, he manages to win, he might be looking statewide again. Does this have something to do with his aspirations, do you believe?
Well, I'm not privy to that part of the conversation, but quite honestly, looking at it, from the political standpoint, from the political aspect, you could see the reasoning behind that. Number one, you would want to solidify, you have Mark Poloncarz who's running for re-election. It's going to be a tough race. Anytime you go in against an incumbent, it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. Mark has a message that he has to get out there. The Democratic Party has a message that they want to take to the people. County Executive Collins has a record over the last 4 years that he's going to run on. So I'm sure that there's some looking down the road in terms of the next governor's race. As you said, Chris Collins had toyed with the idea in the past, and it's not to say that he may not have aspirations again in the future. So from the political standpoint, I'm sure there's some of that intrigue involved in this race.
Speaking of aspirations, before I let you go, your name was floated. Actually, you were considered the front runner, last I checked, for Erie County Clerk. That's the position that Kathy Hochul gave up to become a congresswoman, of course, Chris Lieseld's seat. Are you still interested in that position?
Well, quite honestly, at one time I served as deputy county clerk to County Clerk Dave Swartz at the time. It's something that when that seat came open, I had an awful lot of people just come to me and encourage me to run for that position. And I have some familiarity with the office. I know how it runs. It's something that I very seriously looked at and very seriously considered. But it was on a Friday afternoon as I was leaving the office, looking at all the possibilities one day and just seeing the dynamics of what was happening. Just as you talked about, Liz, the number of members who have left and the changes that are going about. I believe, number one, that I love what I'm doing. I love representing the people of the 143rd District in Albany. It gives me an opportunity to get involved in issues and that at the local level, I would not have been involved in. So I absolutely love what I'm doing. And in the end, taking a look at the possibility of what we're doing in the Assembly District, what we're doing in the Assembly, and what Governor Cuomo has meant to the state of New York in the first 6 months, the record that he's accomplished, the things that I believe that we can do as a state legislature in moving this state forward. I think it holds an awful lot of promise, and that's one of the reasons why I've decided to stay in the Assembly, work my way through, through the committee process and whatever comes that way. But more importantly, work with the governor, work with my colleagues in the legislature to get things done, to get New York back on the right track. Okay. Well, Assemblyman Gabryszak, thanks very much for joining us from Western New York this evening. It's great to see you, and have a good rest of the summer if we don't catch up with you again. Thank you, Liz.